Hello, and thank you for joining me. My name is Dhana Doobay, and today I'm going to give a short overview of some commercial legal strategies for TMT businesses managing a return to business as usual as we start coming out of national lockdowns during these COVID times. In reality, this will involve building on those strategic, legal and regulatory decisions faced by many businesses in maintaining and developing relationships during the pandemic, particularly with suppliers and customers, but in a more focused and proactive manner, rather than perhaps the more reactive approach of the last year. So before we look at some of the tools that we would suggest, let's take a look back at the last year. Much has been said over the last year about the opportunities and challenges in our COVID pandemic climate. TMT businesses may have weathered the storms of national lockdowns, homeschooling, and home working better than most due to the unprecedented demands for capacity, content, and platforms. That said, commercial challenges have been clear to see, ranging from governmental and public pressure to maintain essential services for all and effective takedown policies for harmful and unacceptable social media content, all the way through to network capacity, supply chain, and customer service strains to cover huge increased demand for bandwidth-hungry streaming, gaming, video conferencing, healthcare, and homeschooling platforms. This industry, though, is no stranger to the need for reinvention, innovation, and transformation. And arguably, the trends for successful re-emergence of TMT businesses in a post-COVID world are already in play. Nevertheless, we want to highlight 5 legal tools for TMT businesses to consider when planning their next steps. The first tool is focused stakeholder engagement on key policy issues. Governments, regulators, and industry have a role to play in shaping the provision of essential services, and TMT businesses can seize the initiative to contribute to and shape the ongoing policy dialogue about what these should be and how access to all for all will be provided. In particular, we have seen comment on the outdated nature of the net neutrality rules during a pandemic, which required preferential access to certain platforms, such as homeschooling resources, and the need for big tech OTT players to be better regulated. The second tool is rapid corporate governance internal decision-making structures for creating and modifying commercial relationships. TMT businesses often have incubator units which operate independently of the core business to allow innovation to foster and develop without the need for extensive corporate approvals. Contractual governance processes with key strategic partners may also need to be considered in the same way, to ensure that these can be called on to deliver change with minimum delay. The third tool, digitalisation of key commercial relationships. The pandemic has only served to enhance the need for quick and easy access to online resource. Internal and external commercial arrangements are no different. A digital portal for B2B customers, digital customer engagement, internal policies identifying contract protocols by reference to key markets or maybe revenue thresholds. These will all enable greater agility and flexibility in meeting customer demand. An internal portal with key go-to agreements such as NDAs, non-disclosure agreements, would also greatly assist with time-to-market pressures from business teams. The fourth tool is effective risk management and leveraging of key commercial partnerships. This is perhaps the most back to basics of the proposed tools for effective business making. A focused review of strategic commercial relations and provisions relating to liability, force majeure, breach, termination, regulatory compliance in an evolving landscape and disrupted marketplace, dispute management, change management, and corporate governance to better manage and share inherent contractual risk in new and existing ventures. Also view these relationships from the perspective of growth opportunities to see where strategic partners, for example, could be further leveraged or monetized by relying on an internal review of those provisions which might allow the parties to discuss new opportunities. The fifth and final tool is proactive settlement and dispute resolution strategies to foster relationships and investments. Consider how any contractual breaches during the COVID period can be addressed and resolved effectively without resorting to termination if possible, perhaps by regaining control through step-in or partial suspension, or implementing change management processes to restructure obligations, or otherwise relying on a managed exit scenario. Consider too whether an internal policy on effective dispute management through internal senior management escalation is needed to create a shared approach on managing and responding to disputes as they arise, reducing the risk of litigation and damaged relationships. So just by way of recap then, I will share my screen with you now. So we've been looking at how we can best exploit TMT business relationships in a COVID world, some of the legal strategies that we might suggest. We started by looking at some of the challenges faced by businesses over the last year and identifying some of the tools that could be built upon in order to implement recovery scenarios in a post-COVID market. The first tool was focused stakeholder engagement. Identify key policy areas for your business. Engage in constructive dialogue. Fit for purpose decision-making processes. Look at your internal corporate governance and decision-making structures to implement greater efficiencies, and think about whether you might need to ring-fence innovation labs and new product teams to make them more efficient in responding to market trends and challenges. Digitalisation of key commercial relationships. Here are some examples of what you might want to think about. Online customer portals, digital customer engagement, and an internal go-to document bank. The fourth tool is effective risk management. Look at your key partnerships and commercial relationships and think about whether the risk management provisions are robust and flexible, not just in the context of current growth, but also proposed growth of the business. Proactive dispute resolution strategies. Build bridges in the current climate. Look at your internal policies and implement user-friendly escalation processes through senior executive and management teams, rather than having to rely on costly litigation, arbitration, and mediation processes. So these are intended to represent a structured, coordinated application, hopefully of strategies that are already in play in order to enable continued innovation and reinvention to be fostered, but with the lessons of the last year under our belt. So, in conclusion then, I think it's fair to say that businesses will continue to hopefully build on strategies that are no doubt being used and relied upon already, but our focus would be on using a structured and internally coordinated approach to build on the last year's successes and strengths for the sector. Thank you very much indeed for listening. Please do contact me with any questions that you might have, or if you would like details of our expertise in advising TMT businesses on these and other issues facing them in the ongoing transformation and digitalisation of their businesses. I will share my screen with you to provide you with my contact details. And thank you again for listening.